In this chapter, we're going to add some style to our report. We'll see how to configure the header and footer, which are part of the structure of the report, but they're also responsible for making the report look good. We'll customize the report at the component level to show you granular control of styling. Then we'll see how to create style rules in general. And finally, we'll see how to make the style sheets reusable with the export feature. Alright, in this lesson, we're going to start styling our application. But before we get to colors and fonts and things like that, let's talk about how we can make the report look a little bit better by configuring the header and the footer. This is going to be something typical that you'll do in multi-page reports, especially because of the dynamic nature of headers and footers that you can apply using Telerik reporting. And we're going to pick this right up where we left off in the last chapter with our simple report that shows the table of RPS items. Now, when we look at it like this in HTML view, it's all one long table. But if we go to the print preview mode, the report gets separated out as it would be printed on multiple pages. And each page is going to have the ability to have a header and a footer. This is going to be the same whether you print the report or if you download it as a PDF. I'm going to keep this application running while I go to the designer. By the way, you can make modifications while the app is running and the report viewer is displaying your report. You'll just need to refresh the page once you're done editing. Now in Report Designer, make sure you have the table report already open. And I'm going to start off with the header, which is this section up here. Let's do something simple first. Go to the Insert tab, and I'm going to insert a text box and type in the text Open Issues. Let's take a peek at Report Explorer right here on the right side. And you'll see that there's our text box. Text box 13 is the one that's selected, and it's inside of the page header section. When we dropped the text box into the header area, it automatically got populated under the header section. Now I'm going to drop in one more thing here, and that's going to be the picture box. Let's drag the picture box on the left here. This is going to be our logo area. Make sure you have it selected, and let's go over here to the properties of the picture box. Right now the value is blank, but we're going to select a new value here. Let's go to our project and then RPS Web. Under the www root folder in images, we have our RPS logo. Let's open that up. Now with images that are dropped in the report, you can play around with these and resize them to how you like them. The picture box has a property here that's called sizing at the very bottom. And right now it's set to scale proportional, but you have other options here. For example, stretch, which will not honor proportions of the original image, or normal, which is the actual size of the image. And you can see how that reacts. I'm actually going to leave this on scale proportional. Let's put the logo on the left here and let's preview the report to see what the new logo and text box look like. You'll probably want to spend a little bit more time designing your own header than I just did. Now I did save this, and let's go back to our running application and refresh the page to see what that looks like. There's our logo and our text box, and when I scroll you'll see that there's only one copy of that because this is the HTML version of the report. However, if I go to print preview, you'll see that I have the exact same header on every single page. And that's the effect we're going after here. Now, besides the header, there's also the footer. I'll add a little bit of text to my footer here as well. On the design page, this is the footer. Go to Insert and add a text box here. Let's move this to the right here. Now, because I'm in the footer, and actually the header has this feature as well, we can use pre-calculated fields. So instead of just having static text here, I'm going to make the value of this page dependent. So there's the value. We're going to edit this. Let's remove the default text and do equal here. And let's expand functions, go to page. And here we have some page related functions. You can get the page number or the page count. I'm going to double click on page number. Now this comes up as a function because you're able to have pages displayed based on certain scope. So even within the same report, if you have multiple groups or multiple objects where you want to restart paging, you can do that by using the page function. And if you want to know more about that, check out the documentation for further details on that. However, you can also call page number without the function, just like this. Let's press OK here and save the report. And I think you can imagine what happens when we do that. I'm going to refresh our application and go to print preview, and you'll see that now we have page numbers on each page of the report. So there's 1, there's 2, and there's 3, and so on. So that's how you can configure the header and the footer of the report. We're going to look at some more styling options in the next few lessons. In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to start styling your reports using the Telerik Report Designer. Instead of this table report, we're going to go back to the RPS dashboard report. You'll find that in the project under reports, this one right here. And that report has a lot more colors that we can use to demonstrate styling. And I'd like to come close to the styling of the dashboard that we already have as far as our color scheme for the open and closed items in our chart, as opposed to what we have now, which looks like this. Now make sure that if you do run this project in Visual Studio, you want your report page to point to the correct report. So let's go to Components, Pages, and then Report.Razor, and make sure that this report source options is pointing to the right TRDP file. In my case, it's not. I want it to match this file name right here. So I'll just copy and paste that in to avoid any typos. Let's do a quick validation by running the project and going to the report page. Sure enough, there is our report with the chart. All right, back to Report Designer. I want this chart area to take up as much space as possible horizontally. So I want to move the legend here under the chart instead of on the right here. To do that, select the chart and then go to Legend in the Properties, expand it, and under Position, you're going to select the relative position to be bottom center. That's already going to give our chart a little bit more space to spread out. And I'm also going to drag the chart out to take up even more space horizontally. You can drag this out manually with your mouse, or if you go over here to the Properties, you'll find the Size property under Layout, where you can set the width and the height here as well. I also want my horizontal x-axis to be a little bit more legible. I'm going to select Graph Axis 2 just by clicking on it. And under Appearance, we have Style. Expand that. You can find Font here. Expand Font. And here you can set the size and also the font name. I'm going to leave this as Arial. And let's set the size to 8 points. Let's also change the color from black to, let's do this dark gray. And that looks better. Now, I also want to change the open and closed colors here so it matches my current design of the application more. So select the chart and go to Appearance. And under Appearance, you have Color Palette. Let's expand that. And we're going to select Color Palette here. And this will turn your colors blue. But don't worry about that. We'll fix that momentarily. Let's expand this and open up the Colors Collection. We're going to modify this collection. It's set to Dodger Blue by default. We're going to remove that and add a new color. I'm going to type in a hex code here, which matches our color for the open items. And then I'll add one more color, and that's going to be the hex code that matches the closed items. When you click OK, you'll see that the colors look a little bit more like what we have on our application dashboard. We're getting there. Now, if you find that you flip the colors, for example, you want green on the bottom, purple on top, you can always go back to the color collection and just reorder them. And now the colors are reordered. Now, if you have a keen eye, you might have noticed that our dashboard's chart bars are semi-transparent. They're not 100% opaque. You can see lines through them. Well, we can do that in our report as well. Select the chart and then go to Color Palette, open up our color collection. You can modify these colors here. Notice that the value here is RGB for red, green, and blue, but the hex colors also have an initial FF value, which means full opacity or full alpha. There's no direct way to specify alpha transparency here from the picker, but you can enter the entire hex value here instead if you wanted to. So instead of FF, let's do BB for CD180. So it's the same exact color, but now instead of FF for the first value, it's going to be BB. Notice it automatically converts that to RGB, including the alpha transparency initial value. So now we know 187 is equivalent to BB. Select this second number, and you can enter the alpha transparency manually here as well. So I'm going to enter 187 and press OK. And now we have these slightly muted colors for the bars that are slightly transparent as well. You can see through them. Our dashboard also has these bars that are pretty wide and pretty close together. That looks pretty good, so we can do that as well here. This one is a little bit more tricky to find, but we can do it. Select the graph axis at the bottom here. And if you want to see where that is under the component tree, it's under Graph, Coordinate System, Cartesian Coordinate System 1, Graph Axis 2. So make sure Graph Axis 2 is selected here. And let's go down to Scale, expand that. And the number we're interested in changing is this spacing slot count value. Right now it's set to 1. We're going to set this to 0.2. And now the bars are wider and closer together. Let's save this and do a quick preview. I think that looks pretty good. Let's check it out on the web. Here is the dashboard, and I'm going to go to the report page, and here it is on the report page. And I do like the way that looks. Now, you did see me change a few properties here and there, but there are a ton of different properties that can be changed, and it would be impossible to cover in this course. So please see the documentation. Or, better yet, you can play around with the different styling yourself and get familiar with the way these structures are styled by trying it out yourself in the report designer, and also take a look at the available demos to see how they were styled. In this lesson, we'll take a look at creating style rules, which can be reused across reports. Let's apply these style rules globally to report objects. We've already seen how to apply styles to some of these objects that we already have on the report design service by selecting an object and then finding the right properties to edit. And that's a good way to explore what styling properties are available. Another way you can style these objects is by right-clicking on the object themselves and then clicking on Style. This will bring up the style editor directly so you can modify styles here. Let's go to Insert, select the header and drop in a text box. Right-click on it and click Style. You can even copy and paste styles onto other objects. But every time you do that, it'll still create local copies of styles associated with each component. Instead of local, we want to talk about global styles, styles that you can apply to multiple instances of the text box, for example. Let's create a style rule right now. Go to the Report Explorer and select the report, the top level node here. In the properties, scroll until you find the Style Sheet property. As you can see, we already have 4 style rules created here. On a blank report, there would be no style rules yet. So let's click on the little ellipsis and bring up the style rule collection editor. We'll be able to add new style rules right here. Click on Add, and this will add a default rule, telerik.reporting.drawing.style rule. We can modify this default value on the right. So expand value, and under selectors, right now it's set to none. We can click on the ellipsis to define a selector. We can target different parts of the report based on these different selectors here. If you're familiar with how CSS works on the web, well, this is kind of similar. You're targeting different objects in the report based on type, attribute, style, or descendant. Let's start with a type selector. So select that one, and we're going to start with a type. Right now it's set to report item base, but we're going to change that. Scroll down to text box. And that's because I want to target this text box here. Let's click OK, and one more time. So now we have one selector targeting the text box, and we can define the style here. Let's just add a background color so we can see it immediately. This color right here will do. Click OK, and you'll see that our text box has the new color that we've just selected. Now, if I drop another text box in the report, it'll also have that same color. And that's because we've globally targeted text boxes to have that style. Now, for quick reference, you can see the styles listed right under here. These are the 4 that were previously defined, and now we've defined this 5th one, the text box one. By selecting here in Report Explorer, you can quickly modify the properties and the styles right down here without going through the previous wizard. So you can tweak that color here. Let's say we go with this pink one, and you'll see that all the text boxes are going to be affected by this. So I'll switch it back. Let's take a look at some of the other selectors available. I'm going to change the text in this text box here to RPS. This time we're going to approach it from the Report Explorer Styles node. So right-click on Styles and click on Add Style Rule. It'll have the same effect, but this time I'm focusing directly on the style rule editor instead of the collection editor. We're going to need to specify a selector again. And instead of specifying type selector, I'm going to target the attribute selector this time. And for the type, I'm also going to target text boxes. So let's scroll down, select text box. Now the difference here with the attribute selector is that now we can specify the property name and value. So we're looking for the property name, and this is the name of the property of a text box. Just so we're clear. And the name of the property of the text box is going to be value, unfortunately. I know this a little bit of a naming confusion that could cause, but you can see that here we're indicating that we're looking for the value attribute of a text box. And property and attribute are interchangeable here. Now we're going to enter the value of that to be RPS. What this will do is target any text boxes whose value, or the text inside of it, is equal to RPS. And that would be just this text box here. So we'll target that, click OK here, and now we can define a separate style. Let's change the color of the font, and we'll give it this olive drab color. Click OK. You can probably tell that the color of the font changed there, but I'm going to make it a little bit more dense. So I'm going to select the text box and go directly to the style here. And in the properties box, you'll see that all the styles of this current text box that's selected are exposed here, even though they're a combination of different rules that we've defined in the report. the background color coming from the text box selector, and the olive drab font color coming from the attribute selector. Everything's being combined here. So instead of font bold being false, I'm going to set that to true, just so it's a little bit thicker. And I'm also going to change the size to 12 here, so it's a little bit bigger. There we go, more visible now. The style is being applied to this text box because the value is RPS. If the value becomes anything else other than RPS, the local properties that we've defined will still be applied, but the global properties, the color, will no longer be applied because the value does not match RPS. So if we set this back to RPS, now the attribute selector will match and the color will be applied again. Let's get one more text box in here, and I'm going to use a different targeting method here for this one. For this text box, I'm going to target it using the style name. You can think of this as the equivalent of a CSS class. So for style name, let's call this one heading. Now that we have that in there, let's go back to the RPS dashboard report root node, open up the style sheet. We'll add one more rule, expand the value, and here let's choose a different selector. We're going to choose the style selector this time, and this is going to match your style name, and we've called that one heading. I'm going to click OK here, and let's create a style for it. And let's change the font size. Let's go with 20. And just for fun, just so that we see a bigger difference, we're going to change the font name to Comic Sans. Of course, don't do this in real life. It is for demonstration purposes only. Let's click OK here, and you'll see that now our text box has that very beautiful Comic Sans large font. And that's because the style name heading is applying that style. If we change this to another style name like head or nothing at all, it'll lose that styling. Let's go back to heading here. And notice, of course, all our text boxes still maintain that same background color, and that's based on the first rule that we've added. So these are some examples of creating style rules globally in the report, and next we're going to take a look at how you can save those style rules to be reused. In this lesson, we're going to see how we can reuse our style sheets by exporting them from this report and then importing them into another report. We've configured some custom styles here, even though it's not the best looking report I've ever seen, but it'll prove a point. All right, in the Report Explorer, select the top node, which is the RPS dashboard report, and then in the properties under Style Sheet, click on the ellipsis to open up this Style Collection Editor. Right below all our rules, we have this Export button. Let's click on that. I'm going to save this in the Reports folder in our project, just for organization, and I'll call this file RPS Report Styles.xml, and click Save. Let's go back to Visual Studio, and there is our Reports folder. There's our new Report Styles file. Now, we've been working on the RPS dashboard report, but earlier in the course, we also looked at the RPS table report. These are the styles we've just exported. You can take a look at that and examine the file and the structure of it if you're curious. You could modify the XML directly if you really wanted to here. Open up the table report in the Report Designer. Now we need to import and use these styles that we've just exported. So select the RPS table report node in Report Explorer and go down to the External Style Sheets property. Click on the ellipsis next to that. Click on New and select the RPS Report Styles XML file and click Open. You can select multiple style sheets and use them in the report if you want to. I'm going to click OK here, and you'll immediately see that our style has been applied to all the text boxes in this report. Now, if you remember from the previous lesson, we had some different selectors that we used to target different aspects of text boxes. For example, we had an attribute selector that took effect if the value of the text box was RPS. So if I set the value of this text box to RPS, you'll see that we have that style applied. Notice here that it's applying the color from the global style sheet that we've applied, but not the font size of 12 and the bold font size that was local to the text box in the previous report. We can go further and apply the style name of heading to this text box, and that'll apply the other selector. So it'll combine all the styles together, not only giving us the color from the attribute selector, but also the font and the size from the style selector as well. So as you can see, all our global styles were saved and can be used in this other report now. Congratulations on completing the course on Telerik reporting. We've explored this powerful set of tools and libraries for creating, previewing, exporting, and managing reports, as well as empowering end users to design their own. We began with an overview of the components that make up Telerik Reporting and moved on to the installation process, setting up tools, configuring application startup, integrating report viewers, and adding a web API endpoint. We then learned to design and integrate reports using the Telerik Report Designer and explored advanced features like report parameters, user identity management, rendering, paging, globalization, and using a web report designer. We also covered styling reports by configuring headers, footers, component-level styling, and reusable style rules. Telerik Reporting is a mature embedded solution that provides flexibility for a variety of reporting needs. Additionally, Telerik Reports Server, a related product, offers a centralized platform for creating, managing, and delivering interactive reports with scheduling, alerts, user management, and is now deployable on both Windows and Linux. It's a turnkey solution for centralized report storage, access management, and easy integration of viewers in applications. With the skills you've gained, you're ready to use Telerik Reporting and Report Server to create dynamic and scalable reporting solutions in your applications. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you're excited to apply these skills to elevate your projects.